What's up YouTube? My name is Neil Alferman. Today I'm going to show you how to make your very own custom LED neon sign. Let's get started. I've been making LED neon signs for about a year now. My first one was for my wedding, and I'm finally getting around to making a video about how I make them. This will be the first of hopefully many more sign videos to come. As you probably noticed on the iPad, I have the client send me a picture of their handwriting. This really helps me trace the sign, but more importantly, it gives the sign a very personal touch. A lot of this process is repetition, so I'm going to focus on tips and tricks along the way, so once you understand one part, you can finish that aspect throughout the sign. You'll see some fails along the way as I troubleshoot to figure them out and how to avoid them in the first place. So here's a short montage of prepping the glass for the sign. Alright guys, these are the little clips that hold the neon in there. I go ahead and put a bunch together with the screw already in, saves a little time. And basically we're just going to punch a hole along our lines, screw these in, and lay in our neon, and then cut it where we need to. And if this is the first sign you're making, take some of the scrap we cut off and test your drill bit and your screw. Make sure you got the right size, because you don't want to drill too big and then your screw doesn't stay, or drill too small and then crack it when you put the screw in. The piece of foam insulation underneath is a huge help. Not only does it support the sign and keep it from getting scratched, but it will protect your work table from getting holes drilled in it or screwing your sign down to the table. These little black lines are all your cut marks. And then that leads to your, see if it'll focus, your positive and negative in there that we're going to solder to. I love these little tube cutters. They make it a lot easier to be precise on those marks. So what I do is kind of hold your finger where you think you're going to put that clip and let the rest of it relax. And then that tells you your story about where it'll look good with its natural bend. Right here, I'm just eyeing up how I need to cut the neon at an angle so it meets the middle of itself cleanly. Having those angled cuts will really make your sign stand out versus one that just has square cuts. Another little tip here is to cut your angled side first, and then you can always trim that square cut a lot easier than redoing your angle cut. Sometimes a box cutter is best to get that angle just right. Now I'm not perfect. I ended up moving that. It was out here. Just looks too wide compared to that O. And I know it's not exactly her handwriting, but to make it a little more pleasing to the eye, we tried to make the O's a little more similar. Now I gotta adjust and make sure this is all perfect, but you'll have that. Now it's time to drill the holes to hide your wires. I find it best to use a step bit for this. I've never had tear out on the glass from a step bit, but I have had tear out with just larger drill bits. So I just am extra careful, and that step bit seems to do a job. I like to use a flap disc on an angle grinder to take that sharp point off the screws. Now it's time to solder. There's little places you can cut this neon to make it easier to solder. As I'm doing in the video, you just take off a little piece on the bottom side, and that'll expose the 2 points that you're going to solder to. Get a little tug test, make sure they're on there. And then what I do, because after we stab this through the glass, all these wires are going to look the same, just take my wire strippers and just strip the positive. So then we're just going to take our piece soldered, hide our wires, click it back in, and go to this piece. And then again, I just hit those wires in the same hole as the last piece, and put this back in place. Kind of readjust, make sure you like all your curves, and then make this as seamless as you can. Alright, so here's a little jumper I made to test if your lights are good or if your solder's good. Basically I just got an alligator clip on my positive and then just this little crimp on my negative. And then plug it in, you can make sure your light works. And here it is flipped over after I got all the wires soldered on and poked through. And you see how convenient this will make it when you kind of group a few lights together. Because imagine if you use one end here, one end there, this end. So you just kind of plan for that. And remember how we skim these positives? That'll make finding them super easy. So what I do is I trim off maybe, or skin about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch off whatever wires you're working with. I guess before I do that, I make sure they're all about the same length or where I want them. Pro tip, worry less about the camera and focus on what you're doing, and don't grab the wrong wire. Land right on the screw, and that'll be nice. A nice place to attach it, hide it. So then I take my master wire and I'll just put a piece of heat shrink on this. Take my positives all together. Then you just twist them up and fold it back on itself. Take this over that. Take heat down. I go through and do about 4 lights worth of positive, and I'll come back and do the 4 lights worth of negative. That way I can test as I go, and as you see here, I messed up.
Well, if you better track your tails that happened to you than this, is what it should look like. So you can double check along your way. Obviously that you need to do that. Once you've proved that a section works, I take these tiny little clear zip ties, and this is what's going to hold our wire in place. So that's why we didn't sand these down all the way to the glass. So I'll just put it around the wire and then around the little screw. Get it super tight. And then I'll come back and trim those tails. But that's how I train it.
You can see here between the lights, I just twist the positive and negative together. It gives it a nice clean look. I always try to make the back as pretty as the front. On your last connection, or wherever you want your wire to come off your sign, just remember to add some speaker wire to it. This little clear plug comes with the neon, and it makes a perfect disconnect point next to the dimmer. These dimmers are super easy to install. The little schematic makes it nice and easy. Just 3 little points, and I use that same method. I just twist the wires together and fold them back on themselves. The dimmers I use have a threaded collar that make them easy to attach on anything thin. And then I threw this little plastic box I got on there just to make it cleaner. But the client can take that box off and mount that switch wherever they want. One of the last steps is just drill some holes for mounting.
Here she is, just about wrapped up. I'm gonna get behind here and super glue these right behind these lines where you can't see them. But right now we're just kind of fine tuning, make sure we like all these curves and intersections, make sure everything looks like her drawing. And as soon as we like it, we're gonna light this bad boy up. All right guys, thanks for following along, we did it. If you got any questions, let me know in the comments. Hopefully this helped. It's tedious, but it's not too hard. But if it's something you don't want to tackle, but you want one done, follow me on Instagram at Neilferman, comment on this video, get a hold of me, and I'll make you one. Again, thanks for following along, and subscribe because I got tons more signs, different kinds of signs coming up. A few backlit signs, a few glowing sticker signs. Should be pretty sweet. So thanks guys.